really something called AQ, the Adversity Quotient, and how do they look at adversity and how do they overcome adversity or deal with adversity. If we're able to identify that maybe this person is still developing that ability to overcome challenges, then us putting them in an office that has challenges does not make sense, right? Great clinician, great leader, but isn't great with adversity. There's going to be offices, there's going to be businesses that have adversity. That's going to be a really tough spot for that person to be successful in. One of the biggest pieces to that adversity quotient is that when something goes wrong, who takes responsibility? Is if everything that goes wrong is somebody else's fault, that's probably going to be a challenge.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Dental Truth Project. We're very excited to have Dave Gaspar. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Gaspar.
Perfect.
Something like
That's
that.
right. Yep, that's it.
Here, the CEO of Smile Partners USA. But before we get into that, I'm going to toss it over to Ken for our Ask Ken segment.
All right. Thank you, Dallin. And super excited for our guest today and the episode as always. Okay, so here's the question that came in, and I've gotten this question now a couple of different times, it formatted in different ways. So I'm gonna take a different angle. So here's the question: why do some DSOs grow revenue fast but never seem to improve margins? Let me take just a second and explain what's happening here. When you are going into growth mode and you're growing your top line, you are increasing your expenses. You just have to, because you need more people, you need more marketing, you need more of everything that's going on. And so the general gist of this is ultimately this settles out. But if you keep growing top line, you're going to have a hard time ever seeing where your margins are really landing. And so as you're growing, especially when you're at a very fast pace, you have to realize that the place where you need to be looking is at your cash flow to make sure you're not running out of or burning through your cash with whatever growth initiatives that you're taking on. And then on the other side, as your growth starts to slow or it kind of levels off, that's where you start to see the real margins on the other side. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be profitable, but you definitely have to keep a very close eye on every single expense that's being added to your infrastructure to support that growth. And then hopefully, if you can keep it level, then that means your margins will quickly return after your growth kind of levels out. All right, so that's it for the Ask Ken segment. I'll toss it back over to you, Dal.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. Now, Dave, we're gonna give this to you now. Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners and then give the truth that you want to share we can discuss today.
Excellent. It's great to be with both of you. I appreciate the opportunity and the time to spend with you guys. So yeah, as you said, I'm the CEO of Smile Partners. I've been with Smile Partners for a little over 4 years. We're a DSO located in the Midwest. We're in 6 states currently. We support GP practices. Up to date, we've grown through acquisition, so partnering with practices that have grown, are in desirable locations, technology forward, have done a great job of retaining not only their teams, but also their patients and are looking to continue to grow. We'd like to believe that we're able then to provide world-class support on the non-clinical side so that we can take a little bit off of their plate and allow them to really focus on the clinical portion of the business, which ultimately is part of why, if not the whole reason they became dentists, is to drive those clinical outcomes and deliver clinical excellence. And so we want to partner with offices. We've been successful partnering with offices where we can help them on the non-clinical side, and then they can drive that clinical success. We've got about 125 offices across our states, and certainly lucky to support some really great clinicians, both on the doctor side as well as on the hygiene side. And then I think the thanks. And then the truth that I think is probably spoken or discussed or thought about across every DSO, but I don't know that we exactly have the answer. And I think the answer continues to evolve, which is part of why I think it's the continued truth that we need to talk about, is really how do we recruit and identify associates, and then how do we ultimately help them be successful as clinicians, as potential future partners or business owners, whether it's in the organization they start with or whether it's in a different organization or they leave a DSO and go to private practice. I think if we as an industry can all continue to focus on the importance is the development of the clinicians, and not that it's not important that they stay or they're with certain groups, but really just putting the idea of let's do what's best for the doctors and the clinicians, whether that's doctor or hygiene. That's ultimately what is going to be best for the industry as a whole, as well as all the private practices, as well as all the groups. The key is how do we maintain that focus on the importance of recruiting and developing the clinicians and putting them in the right spot, right? There's plenty of dentists out there that have worked in one area that had some success or maybe struggled, and they go into a different environment and they're wildly successful. So looking and understanding, was it the environment? Was it the things around them, or was it this specific clinician, and was there a difference in what they learned or how they developed? Or again, was it just the environment around them? I think it's just important that we're always challenging ourselves on and figuring out that truth of like, was it them? Was it us? Who was it? And why was it? And how do we solve for that? And and then I think the other piece that is a continuation of a conversation that we need to be having, if not daily, on a regular basis, is how we look at, how we evaluate, and how we connect with those potential doctors that are going to join our organization to put them in the right place. And when we're looking as an organization to focus on, and this is across all positions, but specifically talking about the providers, is I think everybody understands we're looking at kind of the EQ, and how are they as a leader? How are they going to interact with their team members, their other associates, or their dental assistants? We're looking at their IQ. Where is their background, how good of a dentist they are or aren't, or where they've come from, or what skills they have, or those types of things. And that is a pretty normal thing of what we're looking at. What is the technical capabilities, and then what are their capabilities as a leader? Both important things, and we focus on that. One of the things that I think we need to continue to drive and have the conversation about is really something called AQ, the Adversity Quotient, and how do they look at adversity and how do they overcome adversity or deal with adversity. And what that meant 20 years ago is one thing, it most likely very different than what it means today, right? And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, or one's better or one's worse, or one group works harder or one group doesn't work as hard, because the access to information and the ease of doing things has dramatically changed across society. And so when we look at and go, okay, here's a candidate that has all the technical skills and has the leadership skills, we know that there's going to be adversity in this field, in this career, in this time. The CBCT goes down, the Cavitron goes down, dental assistant calls out sick, the hygienist calls, like, the power is out in the building. Like, there is going to be adversity. There is no way, whether you're a private practice or whether you're with the greatest DSO in the world, there is going to be adversity. There's no way to avoid that. How do we look at how somebody's going to manage through that adversity, how they're going to overcome with that, how they're going to deal with that? I think that's a really important thing that maybe we don't talk about enough when we're thinking about placing somebody in a practice, right? So if we're able to identify that maybe this person, is still developing that ability to overcome challenges, then us putting them in an office that has challenges does not make sense, right? Great clinician, great leader, but isn't great with adversity. There's going to be offices, there's going to be businesses that have adversity. That's going to be a really tough spot for that person to be successful in, right? Versus if we look at it and go, hey, great hand speed, great clinical outcomes, great leadership, you know what, and they're really high on the adversity quotient, and they understand how to deal with that adversity, maybe that's the person that goes into an office that needs to be turned around, or one that is struggling with patient flow, or one that is struggling with retention, or whatever that is. And so then how do we look at that and how do we match that? I think sometimes within our space, we see a candidate, we look at them, we think they check some boxes, and then we're trying to put them in to solve, I'm going to call it our problem, my problem, right? I've got an office where the doctor left, or I've got an office that's struggling. I find somebody that I really like. Okay, well, I want to put them in there, and they're going to fix that. Well, if that is an office that has a lot of issues and they don't like dealing with issues, that's not going to work. And so I don't know that if we challenge ourselves enough to think through that and place our doctors, when they join an organization, in the right place to make them successful. And then, it becomes hard for them to ramp up and be engaged and want to stay in that practice long term if it doesn't match them. And so I think that conversation, that part of the conversation is one that, all of us need to have more, and we need to understand the adversity quotient. We understand what adversity means to this generation of dentists, different than the last generation or different than the next generation. And then how is that applicable? And then how do we support them to be successful?
Yeah. I love this. I love this.
So much good right here.
Because
did you call it the adversity quotient? I want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's
Go
yeah.
ahead, Dallin.
Mm, well, just because, man, I think 20 years ago, people mostly focused on the IQ of the dentist. And
Correct.
it was,
Yeah.
are they clinically excellent? Can they perform the procedure better than the other dentist down the street? Like that was the question when thinking about a dentist, either what dentist you're going to, what dentist you want to hire. It's, are they a clinically excellent dentist? And then as clinical excellence became more and more of a norm, I think we started focusing more on the EQ. So, like, yes, this dentist is capable of performing the procedure, but do I like them? Do they make me feel good? Or are they making the patients feel good? Are they, I don't want to say selling treatment, but how's their case acceptance? Can they talk to
Sure.
people? Do people
Yep.
like them? Like that becomes this next level up of how good is this dentist? And I think that EQ bit has been dominating the recent conversation. A lot of what I've heard from DSOs when they're thinking about hiring is, yeah, they're good clinically, but we're really interested in people that can drive case
Yes.
acceptance. And so I love this new level that we're taking it, which is, yeah, they may be clinically good and maybe they can talk to people, but if they don't have grit, like if they're not capable of doing hard things, it doesn't matter how clinically good they are. It doesn't matter how much people like them or how well they can talk to patients. If
Yes.
they can't push through when it gets hard, they're not going to last and they're not going to be successful.
Correct. And everybody has a different threshold, and everybody has a different perspective on, adversity and adverse situations of like how somebody looks at, CBCT going down. One doc looks at it this way, the other doc looks at it completely differently. And so, there's just so many situations that you have to kind of talk through and think through. And I think, there's enough data out there in terms of looking at personalities. Really, there's going to be a pattern, right, for all of us of how we deal with adversity. Because, the job interview or looking for a job as a dentist after school is not going to be the first time you're going to have dealt with adversity. There's from your childhood, there's from high school, there's from undergrad, there's from dental school. There's going to be and there's going to be a pattern that if you can talk to, you're going to be able to understand and be able to feel comfortable with, like, okay, this is the path for them to deal with adversity. In my opinion, it does evolve. I think more adversity you deal with, the better you get at handling it. And if you have a mentor or you have somebody that you can talk to about those situations, there's also the learnings that come from that. So I'm sure my ability to deal with adversity today versus 10 years ago is a lot different and is a lot better. So I think it's a skill set that you can grow, but it's only a skill set that you can grow if you acknowledge it and you kind of understand it and you commit to working on it to be able to get better. Because again, in the 15 years that I've been in this kind of space, I've never seen a single office that at some point doesn't have adversity, doesn't have something to deal with.
Yeah. So David, an interesting thought that I've been having as you've been talking about it is, and you know this because you've run multiple businesses, but sometimes when you get into a business, like everything's just kind of pristine. The processes are all dialed in. Everything just kind of rolls and works. And then sometimes you end up in a business that's what is called a turnaround, where, okay, this business needs some help to get itself back into kind of a clinical excellence level. And so I was just thinking to myself about how some of these dentists could make a phenomenal career over time being turnaround experts that say,
Sure.
hey,
Yeah.
I know how to go clean up all the messes in the dental practice, and I know how to get everybody aligned and get things done. And then, by the way, once it's done, I don't hang around for very long because I'm excited about going and doing my next turnaround. Is that a fair way to maybe talk about it?
I think that's a fair way to talk about it. And I think, just to build on that is what I find the majority of the time also is in those turnarounds or in those offices that are struggling, it really is more of a people problem than it is necessarily a process or procedure problem. Not to oversimplify our business, but when running a dental office, if you have doctors and hygienists and people that work there and show up and you're present, you have clinicians and you have patients that come in to see those clinicians and you do the dentistry that the dentist recommends and then you collect for those services, you have a successful practice. Like that is a pretty consistent formula. Have a doctor, have patients, do dentistry, collect money, and you're successful, right? So you can replicate to a certain extent. Now there's processes and there's other things that go into it, but there is that pathway to success. The thing that breaks down, or the thing that complicates that, are human beings and how we interact with each other, and whether we show up or don't show up, or what our personalities are. So to your point, if somebody has an idea of like, okay, here's a successful pathway to run a really successful office, my guess, if you took it to two offices and you executed the same plan, the difference on the success level is going to come down to the people. And when it comes down to the people, that's really then you're moving to the EQ. How do you deal with other human beings and lead them and build those emotional relationships? But then also, how do you deal with the adversity? Because, nobody can see that my son is going to be sick tomorrow, or my car is going to break down on the way to the office, or like, you can't forecast that. So when that does happen, how do you deal with it, and how do you react to it, to the people around you, so that the dentist that can have that process and have that roadmap of having a successful practice, and then understand how to connect with people and be really good at that, and then get really good at like dealing with the unknown and dealing with the adversity, they could have a really really successful career, I think.
So I'm curious, because you've got over 100 locations. You are your organization needs to recruit a lot of dentists in order to keep this machine running. How do you filter for that? And then, is there a working interview? What
Yep.
questions do you ask? How do you identify this AQ element?
Yeah. So, luckily, knock on wood, we do a pretty good job of retaining our doctors, so we don't have to recruit maybe as much as some other people. But yes, your point is well taken. We do.
Recruiting strategy,
right? That is
far.
exactly right. Exactly. Yes. How do you retain them? But we do obviously have to recruit and add. And admittedly, this is a journey that we've gone on over the last couple of years, and it's still being refined. But yes, we do have kind of a set of questions that we look at to understand kind of what they've dealt with in the past around adversity, and how they overcome that adversity, and whether they overcame it or whether they didn't, and then the steps that they took to be able to navigate those kinds of things. And just as an example of, tell me about a time when you were really disappointed with the outcome of something that was really important to you. And that could be of like, hey, I played soccer in high school and we were a really good team and we wanted to win the state championship and we lost. Okay, well, that's a real life thing. Like, how did you respond to that? Oh, well, I quit playing soccer. Okay, well, that's probably not the strongest adversity quotient that there is. Or it's like, oh, no, we came back together, we started practicing, we started working on it, we watched film, we identified why we lost, we put together a game plan, and then we wanted to attack it differently. Okay, well, you came up against adversity, you lost, you were disappointed, things didn't go your way, and here's how you dealt with that. And so it's a lot of kind of asking those questions during the interview and during the time that we spend with candidates, to just kind of understand, how do they see it? How do they think about it? Do they take responsibility for it? Do they not? I mean, that is, one of the biggest pieces to that adversity quotient, is that when something goes wrong, who takes responsibility? Is if everything that goes wrong is somebody else's fault, that's probably going to be a challenge, because you're gonna have to own some part of that. Now, whether you own all of it or you own some part of it, when a problem arises, generally there's enough responsibility to go around. So if it's always somebody else's fault, that's probably a sign that maybe you're not going to be as strong as somebody else when it comes to dealing with that adversity and bringing the team together and that type of thing.
Great point. Great points.
Ken and I, we were just talking about the book Extreme Ownership. Have you read that one? Jocko Willink. Fantastic book on leadership and just life in general. But it kind of speaks to this idea of, when something goes wrong, you can either choose to blame others, or you can take responsibility onto yourself. And especially from a leadership perspective, which any associate in any practice is a leader, if something goes wrong, it is the leader's fault, because they should have given more resources to their people. They should have seen the problem coming. Like that,
Yes.
It always comes back to the leader.
And this may not be a popular opinion, but as much as I think DSOs have been good for the industry, and I run a DSO, so pro DSO and love it, I think transparently it also gives an out to not have to take ownership, right? Whereas you're an associate and you're working quite honestly, even a partner. You could be working in a practice, and if that practice is struggling, I've heard it. It's been said to me, well, you guys aren't supporting us correctly, or the support isn't as good. We don't have enough patients. Okay, well, it's your guys' fault that we don't have patients. Okay, well, have you asked for referrals? Are we retaining our patients? Like, this is a team. Like, it's not just a one or the other. And so, as much as, again, advocate for DSOs and think it's a great part of the industry, they're still in that space. There can't be an abdication of responsibility at the office level by the leaders in the office. Is if I had the magic bullet to be able to get patients in no matter what, and the right patients no matter what, to an office, I'd be living on a beach island somewhere because I'd be a billionaire. Like, I don't have the secret sauce, right? It's a team, it's an effort, it's a culture, it's those things that you've got to work to. And so I do see, like, that's one of those truths that is out there that I think have to talk about, is like, there is that shared responsibility. If you're in an office, and even if you're not an owner, you're a part of a group, and you're running that office. If you're a dentist, you are a leader. By nature, you are a leader of that building because you are a clinician and you are a dentist. And you taking some of that ownership, not maybe all of it, but taking some of that ownership is important. And when you start blaming the DSO or blaming somebody else for the lack of success in that practice, I think that creates some challenges. I don't know that that's healthy for DSOs. I don't think that's healthy for the industry. I think that's one of those things that maybe we don't talk about as much, of like, where does the responsibility lie, and how do we collaborate and put it all on the table and then discuss what are the challenges, what are the issues, and then what are the solutions.
That's
One of
so fascinating.
Well, one of my favorite conversations we've had on this show, it was a couple months ago. We had Dr. Eric Roman on, and he was talking about this exact same dynamic, which is that DSOs started selling the lie that as an associate, all you have to do is come in, practice, and go home. And we took away the ownership and the leadership from the dentist position. And that was wrong. And it doesn't work. And it hurts the practice and it hurts the industry. It does not matter if you are a newly hired associate, fresh out of dental school. You are a leader in that practice if you're a dentist. And if you don't act like it, and if you don't take ownership, you're never going to be successful.
100%. I absolutely, I mean, and even for us with partnering, with providers that have been running their practice for 20 years, and they're like, hey, I want to partner with a larger group that can help me with a lot of the non-clinical things. You can't just abdicate all the responsibility for all the non-clinical things, even as the selling doctor, because you're still the leader. You're still part of the conversation. You may not have to execute it, and that's part of where we come in, is that we can execute the ideas at a larger scale, or more efficiently, or more effectively, and all those kind of things. But we still need you to be an active participant in the practice, and a leader within that practice. And so the ones that are like, I just want to sell, and then I just want to come in, do dentistry, and leave. I'm like, I understand that, but honestly, that's not going to set us up for success. If you sell the practice to somebody and your mentality is, I just come in and do dentistry now, I think that's going to be a challenge long term. Now, I want you to focus on doing the dentistry, and I want to help you with all the non-clinical things. But when we make a decision of like, we're going to do this or we're going to do this, I still need to come to you and say, hey, you've been running this practice for 20 years. What do you think? What do you know? What is your advice? What is your recommendation? I may execute it and I may run with it, but I still need you to be a leader in that practice. And just coming and doing dentistry and leaving, that is not going to work to maintaining a successful practice long term.
We're just about out of time here, Dave. One additional thought to just throw out there, which is congruent with everything that you guys have been talking about here. I think the idea of culture that you brought up, when you have a culture that kind of accepts this and understands it, like for Dallin and I in the business that we run, initiative is one of our key core values. And it means, like, if something goes wrong, your job is to figure out how to fix it, how to course correct it, how to do those kinds of things. So I'm grateful for the fact that we're talking about culture, and the culture that's in a dental practice, and how critical it is that then people just know how to act and behave. It's like, oh, there's a problem. Oh, I'm supposed to help fix it. Or if I haven't been told what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to sit in a corner and wait till somebody solves my problem for me, right?
100% correct. Absolutely. And I think I'm sure you guys see it. I see it. Those practices that have have a strong culture amongst that team and that environment, those are the ones that really have the most success and figure out the way to overcome the challenges and really treat more patients and help their communities and continue to grow. Those ones with that strong culture. One of my mentors, and she's a fantastic dentist, and she taught me a lot. And she was one of the first ones that I saw this. So like, she was like so bold. She was like, I'm putting up what our mission and our vision and what our values are. I'm like, it's on the wall as you walk into the practice. So everybody that walks in every day is going to see that. And if you don't like that, then maybe this isn't the best place for you to work, right? So like, we all aligned to this is the culture. They built it together. They communicated it. Everybody was aligned. This is who we are. This is what we do. And when you have that strong culture and you don't lose sight of that, I think that really makes a strong practice or business.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that's all the time that we have today. Dave, we're very grateful that you came onto the podcast. Just as we're wrapping up, do you have any final concluding thoughts that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, no, I think the only thing that I would say is, as we think through the future of dentistry, private practice, and group, we all, I think, are aligned to the investment in clinicians is super critical to our success, and how we support them and how we give them the tools and resources to be successful, because ultimately those are the most important individuals within the industry, is the ones that can treat the patients, can improve their lives, can improve not only their oral health care, but their overall health care. And what does that mean to the future? And I think everybody being aligned to, we need to build systems, and we need to, as an industry, come together of how do we support clinicians. I think whether it's private practice or DSO, that's going to be the key to our success. So the more we talk about it, the more we focus on it and collaborate and share best practices, I think the better off we're going to be as an industry. And ultimately, the doctors and the hygienists and the clinicians are going to be better off as well.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Dental Truth Project. Thank you, Dave, for coming on with us, and we will see you all next time.